Sophie finished the last of her drink and glanced downward in the direction of her passed-out sibling. She managed a slight modicum of acknowledgement as the thief finished his story.
You seem like you really care about her. That's good, Garrett.
I wouldn't say that.
What do you mean?
Her blue eyes locked with those of her brother's most trusted companion.
What is your obsession with being alone anyway? I've never understood that about you. I know that you understand the value of a favor, so why are you so resistant to the idea of such an intimate one?
Intimacy has nothing to do with it.
The thief snorted.
You want to know what I'm obsessed with, Sophie?
Let me guess. Cold hard coin.
She smirked. Garrett faced her. At that moment, the barmaid saw more diligence and truth in his face than she had ever witnessed in a lifetime.
I told myself, just this once. And why the hell not? After all, it isn't every day that a gorgeous, firm-bodied young woman just throws herself at me.
Garrett chuckled. His disposition lasted only momentarily, however, as the direness of his situation once again reignited an unknown fire within his very soul. He traced the thick rim of the ale Sophie had purchased him for comfort. The thief rarely drank. He saw alcohol as nothing more than a neglect to his concentration and stamina. But at that moment, Garrett didn't want to concentrate. He just wanted to get these thoughts out of his head. Chugging down a generous helping of liquid courage, he faced Sophie again. His eyes were so conflicted that the boxman's sister nearly reached out for his hand. But she knew better.
But ever since that night, I find myself slowly losing touch with reality. It's like she took everything out of me, good and bad. Everywhere I look, I see her emerald eyes leering into me. I feel her silken touch against my flesh. I hear her laughter, a cacophony of distant and careless spirits. I don't know who I am anymore, Sophie. Even now, Guinevere lies forlorn within the confines of that accursed wood, and I can't for the life of me stand the thought of her being alone. Yet, I am reluctant to return to her. She's tearing the very foundations of my being asunder.
He finished the drink and slammed the empty pint down hard onto the table.
Garrett, what becomes of the thief when there is nothing left to steal?
Don't get philosophical with me, Sophie. I'm really in no mood.
Garrett grumbled, wiping his lips with the back of his leather glove.
It's not philosophy, it's a genuine question. Or do you intend to be known by one term for the rest of your days?
I'm a thief because that's all I know. It's all I'm good at. That is how it has always been.
I think you hold more talent than you realize, Master Thief. After all, you made a forest nymph fall in love with you twice? From what I've read in books, they do not give their hearts away freely, especially to mortal men.
I'm not in any mood for fairy tales either.
The thief grumbled.
Ah, but fairy tales are fictitious. Your Guinevere is very, very real.
I should have known better than to try and chat with you, Sophie. You women always have to romanticize every bloody little thing. For your information, Guinevere doesn't belong to me. She's just my apprentice.
Garrett stood from the table, having had more than enough of this conversation. True or not, he didn't like to talk about his innermost feelings.
And I do not plan on keeping her longer than I have to.
Sophie smirked. She still had one last ace up her sleeve.
Yes, I can see that you've taught her well.
How would you know that? You haven't even met her.
I don't have to, Garrett. I can see that she's already managed to steal something from you. Something that very few have ever seen, let alone touched.
Garrett's hazel pupil dilated, quaking with the words that had just found his ears. Knowledge to which his subconscious was already far too aware. His return to the forest was stopped midway by the ancient temple keeper. Garrett halted his progression with a scoff.
Human, come with me.
You pagans don't strike me as the welcoming type. What's with the escort?
You have returned with the woodsy emerald. If the last mother is to make a full recovery, the ritual must be performed immediately.
How is she?
Garrett asked, dropping the icy facade he had held within the city.
Still resting, so long as her body does not leave the sacred spring, she shall remain alive. But it is only by the power of the woodsy emerald that she shall be fully healed.
And just what does this ritual entail?
The thief crossed his arms. While he would have done anything for Guinevere, every pagan ritual he had stumbled across over the years always filled him with dread, as well as stirring up that very painful memory of when such a ritual was performed on him.
Just a few drops of your blood, I swear it.
The elder replied solemnly.
But for the magic to work properly, you must do so of your own free will.
Nice to know that you aren't planning on mercilessly bleeding me just for the fun of it.
Garrett commented dryly. The elder was far from pleased.
If it were up to me, you wouldn't be involved at all.
His tone was cruel and angry.
The last mother's devotion to you is already far too unnatural.
The thief turned his head up to the cyan sky, watching as a few wispy clouds drifted by.
I know.
You have to understand something about the one you call Guinevere.
Oh?
You once asked why we call her the last mother. There is more reason to this than I initially revealed.
Figures. Pagan folk are about as complex and secretive as they come.
And she is no exception. Or at least she wouldn't have been. Except
Garrett averted his gaze to the ancient when he stopped abruptly.
Except what?
Suddenly, the forest grew very quiet. The temple keeper slowly raised his eyes to meet those of the curious thief.
18 winters ago, our kind saw the first of its downfall. What was supposed to be the beginning of a new era for the pagans was quickly denounced when our God was destroyed by a foul interloper.
The elder began to growl, his human form nearly folding in on itself to reveal the monstrous beast within. Garrett took a few intimidated steps back, wondering if this creature indeed knew who it had been to slay the trickster. But somehow, the elder managed to calm himself.
If that wasn't bad enough, 2 years later, his mistress sacrificed herself to those damn mechanists. After she was gone, we were practically powerless. They knew this, and they came for us. They burned our forests and slaughtered our young. Blood tainted every stone. Every tree still remembers the horrible screams of that night. But in spite of their clear victory, it wasn't enough. They had to add insult to injury. They had to take the very last hope our people had.
He stopped abruptly as a single, greasy tear left his weathered eyes. Garrett held his breath as the ancient faced him.
And so they took her away from us. The last mother now lives under the impression that she is far less grand than she truly is, if not for the vivid memories of her beloved mother. She would believe herself fully human.
Victoria.
Garrett nodded.
She was Guinevere's mother.
The temple keeper then began to laugh uncontrollably.
Something about this amuses you?
The thief asked, perturbed. The elder's eyes were now firmly squeezed shut, his wrinkles and crow's feet mirroring his unwavering smile. He chortled and wheezed, as if filled with an indescribable joy. However, Garrett's initial judgments were proven very wrong when he reopened them. For those same eyes were now burning with insanity.
The amusing thing is that you are so content with calling her that. But in truth, Guinevere is not her real name. That is what the one who abducted her calls her. Her true name has long been lost within the confines of her late mother's branches. You see, human, the last mother must remain in the forest with us. She is more than just a nymph. She is the spawn of our God.
Garrett's eyes flew open.
You can't be serious.
He struggled to fight the reality of it all. Normally, he would have found unbridled zest in the knowledge that she was not his daughter. But instead, the tortured man held his head and sank to his knees. The woman he loved. His Guinevere. She was child of magic and power. She was the trickster's second pagan goddess.